Hello, welcome to this edition of Momentum. I'm your host, Robert Green. I'm happy today to have in the studio with me Khaoula Kamal. Khaoula is a senior in Biomedical Engineering here at Mississippi State University in the Bagley College, planning to go to medical school afterwards, and has just received, she's received many awards. We'll probably talk about some of those, but I think most recently she's recipient of the Simrall Outstanding Engineering Student Award from the Association of Retired Faculty. So Khaoula, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green. Thank you for having me, yes.
Yeah, good. So I'm looking forward to this. Yeah. So in preparation for the Simrall Award, you and I got together and we talked and found out some interesting things about you. And one of those was you did not speak English until you were 5 years old.
I know, and I impress my English teachers every day when they're like, oh, you've only learned English at 5? And I think partly because of the fact that we were immigrants from Morocco, my dad really wanted to conserve my culture and my language. And even though he was an English teacher in Morocco, he knew he would help me whenever the time came to learn the language. So I quickly learned when I got into school, but the first 5 years of my life were just Arabic, and I'm proud to know that I have that part of me still around.
Yeah, so how was the transition coming here and finally learning English and moving in? Did it cause you any issues, or who did you play with, who did you talk to when you were 4?
That's a great question. I mean, knowing 2 languages at that point, I had a lot of fun trying to make different friends from different cultures. One thing that I will very much admit is that, you know, being in the South of America and being different is commonly scary to people. So making friends was a little difficult with the normal citizens of America that were born and raised as Americans. So growing up, I had to learn to be proud in my identity, certainly, since I was with a lot of different people, but I knew that I usually was the only person from my background in a room. Now I know that that holds a lot of unique perspective that I can add to a conversation or any type of group.
Yeah, so you came to Mississippi State, came to engineering, majored in biomedical engineering. When did you decide that's what you wanted to do?
It's a great question. I've always known that I am a creative thinker, but I also had a love for mathematics. So I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and I didn't really understand what engineering meant to me until my later years of high school. And that was when my father unfortunately passed away in a car accident, and my 2 little brothers were also present in this car. And they nearly died as well, but they underwent so many traumatic surgeries and rehabilitation that I witnessed the miraculous recovery due to the nurses and the physicians and the therapists. And so throughout that time, I knew I loved medicine, but the idea of creating a better trauma response system for any type of patient in an extreme situation is something that piqued my interest. So how could I merge my love for medicine and my love for innovation? And so biomedical engineering was perfect for that.
Okay, sounds so good. Certainly sorry about the loss of your father and all, but sounds like something good did come out of it.
Definitely.
It's always good to have doctors who understand the other side of things. So what are you thinking of? How's the quest for medical school going?
Yes, so I mean, it's been an arduous process. Engineering at first was no easy feat, but at the same time, I had to take the MCAT. I had to worry about how do I apply for medical school, and being a first-generation immigrant, they don't have a manual for that. My mom, she wasn't an English teacher, and no one in my family before had gone to college, and so I had to battle that on my own, and she's been a great support system. But luckily, I'm going to UMC next year in Jackson, and I believe that one day I'll specialize in emergency medicine or cardiology, since I have a heart condition of my own. But there's so much more that I haven't learned yet, and so hopefully I'll decide my specialty down the line.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you what specialty you were looking at,
For sure.
so I think that's a good one to go into. I noticed one of the things that really surprised me and interested me about you was, as a freshman, you did an internship, thanks to Senator Roger Wicker, for the Science and Commerce Committee.
Yes.
How did that come to be? What possessed you to want to go to D.C. and work in politics?
That. Yes, I mean, especially in my medical school applications and talking to other engineers, they're like, so why did you decide to go to a law student's internship instead of sticking to engineering or going to something more medically oriented? And my answer to that would be that there's something that angers me a little more than caring for patients, and it's what happens after the patient is cared for, and what happens when that patient is healthy and well and they go home to so many medical bills that they don't have any help to pay for. And I witnessed that exact same thing at 16 when my brother's medical bills that I was so happy helped him and the other one grow better ended up being about $600,000. And the state of Mississippi actually was the insurance for my little brothers, but they decided they did not want to pay for their insurance anymore because it became such a vast number. So at the time, I was really confused. I had a single mom with no job and a lot of siblings that were in pain, and I had to get a pro bono lawyer to get us through that situation because there was no way that $600,000 was going to be paid by my family. And to think that that's the reality for Americans and that our government can abandon someone in their time of need, that a $1 trillion government can abandon a $600,000 bill and give it to someone who has less than maybe $10,000 is insane to me. And I knew that I needed to look beyond just the scope of medicine and application and look at how our government was actually facing these challenges in a national scale.
Okay. And of course, one of the things we have in the College of Engineering is we have a congressional internship program. A little different from what you did. They go to work in a senator's office helping there. But I think there's a lot of similarities. So can you tell our viewers, what was a typical day like for you as an intern?
For sure. So it was definitely out of pace from what I was usually accustomed to in hospitals. I think there was a great camaraderie of people who were looking for change. So Washington, D.C. has always been one of my favorite places that I've wanted to visit and hopefully live in one day. But there was a melting pot of Americans there. It wasn't just the same average American that you would see here down in the South. And so I got to learn from so many different individuals from different backgrounds. And I would come to work bright and early at 9 o'clock, and I would go through the day at nomination hearings. I would write lots of summaries for the senator so that he could read over because he had a very busy schedule. And I got to go to a lot of hearings about critical problems other than public health policy, just things that were challenging America at that day, and hear from those people.
Is there one or two lessons that you learned while being an intern that have helped you out?
For sure. One of the lessons I learned is patience. I mean, anybody can probably assume that anything in law takes a lot of paperwork, a lot of approval from different individuals, but I got to witness the installment of Prabhakar, which was the director of the Office of Technology and Science, on the President's cabinet, and that was something to me that I was really treasured. She was a person of color, a woman, and she was able to show and inspire me that you can make it to the steps of the presidential office in the White House.
So one of my concerns, one of the things I'm interested in is getting more engineers, more specialists involved in maybe not necessarily politics, but at least in public policy discussions and having an understanding of that. Is this something you'd encourage? I assume something you'd encourage other students to do?
Certainly. I think that engineering can be sometimes isolated. We like to look at our worksheets and our problems and solve this specific issue, but sometimes you need to understand how that applies to your neighbor, how that applies to your state and your entire government. And so to be able to see how that one product can affect even people in war in different parts of the world, what are we doing? What are we actually creating? And what effect is it having on people? And I think that offers a lot of perspective.
Yeah. Do you think there's something like that in your future? I know you still got med school and a doctor. You think you might get back into the policy arena at some point?
There's an ongoing joke that I'm going to be a congresswoman, and I think one day, hopefully, that comes to fruition. Right now, I'm more focused on learning patient care and being a valuable doctor so I can witness more of those tragedies and more of those patient cases, and then one day I can fight for those people. Yeah,
well, we certainly have some doctors in Congress, so there is hope. But as an undergraduate, you've also been engaged from fairly early time in your career here at Mississippi State in undergraduate research. Tell us a little bit about the research you've done and why you got interested in it.
Of course. So I am super lucky to have Dr. Priddy as my mentor, Dr. Lauren Priddy. She brought me in when I was just a freshman or sophomore in engineering, and I am able to work on her magnesium project in creating biodegradable orthopedic implants. And so I knew that this was something very important to me, this specific topic, because the whole idea of a biodegradable implant is that you minimize the need for a secondary surgery. It absorbs in the body and allows the patient to heal a lot better. And that mirrors my exact goals of minimizing patient pain and reducing patient recovery time. And so knowing that that niche interest of research can also be applied to my future in patient healthcare is something that I knew was special when I worked for Dr. Priddy.
One question I get, and I think one question a lot of our students have who are interested in doing research is, how do you do it? How did you go about making the connection with Dr. Priddy and getting involved?
So I would say the key word for that is persistence. I know that I knocked on a lot of doors. I bothered a lot of people freshman year, and if you don't bother enough people, they don't learn your name. You'll just become another student. And so I think that if you really want something and you're passionate about a specific topic, reach out to your professors, even if it sounds like really crazy to be, oh, I'm one student out of 400 in their curriculum. I must try anyway. I must bother them. I must ask them questions. And coming back and meeting with them would be special to them, and they'll notice that effort.
Well, I mentioned at the beginning that you've gotten lots of awards, but the most recent one was the Simrall Award for Engineering Excellence, Outstanding Engineering Senior,
Thank you.
Named after one of our former deans of engineering. And that award was based on academic performance, professional leadership, and community service. And it's very competitive to get that, a very selective process. How does it feel to have received that award?
It's a huge honor. Sometimes I think about it and I don't realize that I even deserve something like this. When I'm working the past couple of years, it's really about making it to the next test, making it to the next class, and my end goal of becoming a physician. And one of the most primary things that drove me to keep going is my parents. My mom and my dead father are both huge parts of my life that I want to support in the future. I want to make sure my family has someone to lean on, and being the oldest sibling, I am that person, that lead. And so getting the Simrall Award was something I didn't expect, but it was something that made me reflect on the years of work that I put in and inspired me to think that someone of my color, someone of my background, can still have a purpose and a future in engineering. It's something I didn't grow up seeing a lot.
So one of the things that impressed me, and I think impressed most everybody on that selection committee, was your record of community service. It goes, well, it was indicated as going back to high school. I suspect it goes back further than that. You just didn't list it. So what is it, why do you find community service so valuable?
I think that as much as I talked about looking at the national scale of how our work impacts others, a lot of what you can do and what is accessible to you is your neighbor, is the people in your community. So what better way than to go out in that community and help people? And some examples of that include, or one of my most special ones is working as a community health intern for Mississippi State Extension Services. I was able to communicate with dozens of counties across Mississippi and reach those rural counties that don't have any access to education or to an idea of what healthcare is. And so I went from helping mothers learn how to breastfeed to allowing children to, avoid SIDS, infants. Like, parents don't really know that, and some parents think that that's common knowledge, but when you live out in the country and you don't get the news very often, it's very difficult to know how to take care of your well-being.
Yeah. Well, we've got about a minute left, Khaoula, and one thing that I want to know is you were also named as Miss MSU this past fall, not something you might typically associate an engineering student as doing. So tell us about that experience.
Of course, yeah. I mean, you got to convince the committee that an engineering student is worthwhile, because as engineers, it's so hard to make the time to go out and do more. And so that's something I struggled with, but I made a priority. And like I mentioned earlier, I never grew up seeing a Moroccan be one of those selected. I never saw someone with dark hair and brown skin lead the university in such a role. So when I took this initiative to go for Miss MSU, I was scared. I did not think I was going to get it. I had been selected as sophomore homecoming maid a couple years ago, and that inspired me to keep pushing for something greater. And so I'm really grateful to my Mississippi State community, because I never thought I would make it this far.
Well, we're very grateful to have you here as a student. You're very impressive. I've enjoyed getting to know you more over the last several months, and congratulations on all of your recent awards, and I wish you the best in medical school and in your career.
I appreciate it, Dr. Green.
I want to thank you all for joining us on this edition of Momentum. I look forward to seeing you next time.